For about 10 years after I interviewed um, my first combat veteran from the Second World War, it was pretty easy to find World War II veterans who were able and willing to share their memories of their time in that conflict. And I remember that it felt very sudden. It came on very quickly that World War II vets became harder to find. And when they could be found, relatively few of them were in a place where they could engage in a discussion. I've experienced things recently with Vietnam veterans that reminds me of that moment some years ago when it felt like all of a sudden World War II veterans were getting harder to find. The challenge with Vietnam veterans is that there are fewer of them. Just the war went on longer than the Second World War, but was not as big. There weren't as many Americans directly involved in that conflict. Another challenge with Vietnam veterans is that a number of them are dealing with health problems that stem from the war, mainly from Agent Orange. I think the youngest Vietnam veterans now are close to the life expectancy. So the facts of human life are upon us. You understand that the clock is always ticking on all of us. Time is constantly running out for all of us. But the clock is ticking very loudly now for the Vietnam veterans. And I want to make an appeal to those vets who have not yet shared their story in a way that has been recorded. I want to encourage them to do so. At this stage, it's hard to see who benefits from a refusal to share. There's an understanding, especially for those combat vets who saw such terrible things, that there are things that combat vets may not want to talk about. People understand that. And the point isn't to pry, and the point isn't to dig into places that are painful. But the point is to get some memories down, some memories recorded. What do we remember about Vietnam in general? What were the first impressions we had? What did we think about the conflict when we arrived, halfway through, when we were done? What does the conflict mean to us now? What were some of the things that we did, even if we don't want to talk about everything that we did? It's really difficult at this point to see what is gained by a refusal to share, but it's easy to see what is lost. Family members lose that story. And I don't know how many times I've heard from family members that they wish that they had got something recorded before their loved one passed away. There's this tendency to think, well, we can put it off to tomorrow, to tomorrow, to tomorrow. I've seen this happen so many times, and eventually it's too late. The refusal to share means that the family loses out on that story. It means that history loses out on that story. It's true that a lot of Vietnam veterans have shared their stories. It's true that there are hundreds of Vietnam memoirs that have been written. It's true that there are many projects like the War and Life Project that have recorded these stories. That's all true, but each individual story matters. The story of each individual matters. And if that individual leaves this world without sharing something of his or her story, then that is a real loss. Families lose out, history loses out, and the country loses out. An appeal I sometimes make to veterans is not to leave their stories to people like me. Don't leave your stories to journalists. Don't leave your stories to historians. Don't leave your stories to teachers. Tell your own story in your own way, in your own words. So I appeal to the Vietnam veterans who have not yet shared their stories. Please do so. I'm ready. I'm here. I want to listen to what you have to say.